Welcome to the Project Success Cooking Certificate. My name is James. If this is your first time joining us on a Wednesday evening, then welcome. If you've been here before, then welcome back. So in case you're wondering, Project Success is a youth development nonprofit based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And during the school year, one of the many things that we do is on Wednesday evenings, we will have a cooking certificate in our institute, which is a multi-purpose classroom. However, since we aren't all able to congregate right now, we're not all able to be together, we have started doing this instead on Instagram Live and on YouTube Live. Instagram Live, YouTube Live, YouTube Live, Instagram Live. So if you're joining us on either one of those platforms, hello. Again, my name is James. I usually teach the class. I will be teaching the class tonight as well. One of the things that I think is kind of funny about doing it this way is that I have to do it using my laptop computer and also my phone. And the phone is just a little bit above the laptop computer. So whenever I'm talking to the laptop computer, it looks like I'm looking down. And whenever I'm talking to the phone, it looks like I'm looking over the camera. So it's never perfect. Like on either one of them, it always sort of seems like I'm like looking in between. Actually, maybe that's a good plan. I'm going to look like right in between the phone and the computer today. And so that way it will be equally off to everybody. So over the last couple of weeks, what we have been preparing has been ramen. The reason why is because we're focusing on meals that you can create using what they call pantry staples. So in other words, things that people often will keep in their pantry. So the reason why ramen was an interesting selection is because it used a lot of ingredients that some folks keep in their pantries, but maybe other folks don't, which gave us a chance to both experiment and work within our comfort zone. This week we are doing something kind of similar. We are preparing a pasta dish, but we're not preparing an Italian pasta dish. Really, well, I'll explain. So what we're preparing this week is called Suugo, which is the Somali twist on pasta. So pasta, as many of you all know, is an Italian dish, and the Italians occupied Somalia for a great long time, which meant that a lot of Italian cooking traditions made their way into traditional Somali cuisine. So Somalis put their own imprint on these dishes. So rather than using things like oregano and basil, which are traditional Italian seasonings, they use an entirely different palette, an entirely different style of seasoning, which we're going to talk about today. The reason why we're preparing this particular dish is because I think it sounds really delicious and I've never made it before, even if I have used some of these spices in the past. And I've prepared tons of spaghetti. But it's also because right now, a lot of our Somali friends in Minneapolis are celebrating Ramadan. So that means that they are fasting during the day, and then they break their fast at the end of the day when the sun goes down. And they'll keep on doing that until they get to celebrate Eid. And so on Eid, they have a big party and they get to eat all sorts of things. But at the end of the day, a lot of the folks who celebrate or who observe Ramadan, when they break their fast at the end of the day, there's all sorts of foods that they will eat. Some folks eat what we're going to be preparing this evening. Some folks don't. They eat different things all over the world to break their fast at the end of the day. So if you are observing Ramadan right now and you're looking for a new recipe, then you're welcome to use this one. If you think that I'm doing it totally wrong, I want to hear about that too. So I will let you know what the source of my recipe is. I didn't come up with it, and I didn't just sort of make it up on the spot. That would be a very weird thing for me to do. I am not Somali. I've never lived in Somalia. However, there is a Somali chef who cooks for the test kitchen at Bon Appetit. Her name is Hawa Hassan, and she had posted one of our most popular recipes from the Project Success Institute, something called Digag Kumbe, which is it is a coconut and chicken stew. And it was by far the most popular thing that we prepared at the Institute this past trimester. So I wanted to try another one of her recipes. Her twist on it is using ground turkey instead of ground beef, or using goat meat, which is what a lot of folks will use in Somalia. We're going to be using turkey instead because that's the way her family does it. Let's talk about how we're going to get started. So we're going to be starting by preparing our spices. So rather than using traditional Italian spices, as I mentioned before, we're going to be using something called hawaj, which is spelled X-A-W Aash, hawaj. It's a combination of a bunch of toasted spices. I'm not going to be toasting them tonight. I'm going to be using pre-prepared ground spices, so it's not, strictly speaking, hawaj. And also, I found tons of different recipes for hawaj on the internet. Some of them include cumin seeds, some of them don't. The one that we're going to be using today does not, but you are welcome to use cumin seeds if you want to. There are multiple steps for preparing hawaj. Most of them do involve toasting spices and then grinding them using a mortar and pestle. A mortar and pestle is like a stone bowl with a, I don't know how to describe the pestle really, sort of like a column, like a handheld column of stone that you use to grind against the spices, and that's how you prepare it. But I don't have that, so instead I'm just going to be using ground spices. If you're cooking with us at home, you can use a mortar and pestle if you want to. It will take you more time. Okay, we're going to start out with coriander. This is coriander. Coriander is used all over the world. It's used particularly in Indian cuisines and in East African cuisines as well. So the thing that I like the most about it, it has a really flowery smell. So this is what coriander looks like. There you go. And we are going to take a bowl. I'm using this bowl here, just a fairly small bowl. And we're going to use 3 tablespoons of coriander, which makes it a fairly healthy amount of coriander. I don't usually use that much of it. So this is a half tablespoon measure because my whole tablespoon measure went missing. I don't know where it went. So here we go. I'm gonna put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 of these. So that's 3 tablespoons of coriander. Did I say coriander? I meant, yeah, coriander is what I meant. Okay, great. So we've got those in the bowl, like this. Okay, now we're going to take some cinnamon. We're going to put in a half a teaspoon of cinnamon. I like cinnamon. I'm going to do this by eye rather than measuring it out. I'm just going to sort of do like a 1, 2, yeah, that's plenty. There you go. That's more than enough. All right, that's good on cinnamon. So we've got those 2 in there. Next, we need cardamom. Cardamom also has sort of like a floral aroma. Wow, that's a strong aroma when you just stick your nose right in the cardamom. I use this mainly in curries as well. And how much coriander or cardamom we're going to use? We're going to use 2 tablespoons. This, as I said, is a half tablespoon measure, so I'm going to use 4 of these. 2, 3, 4. Don't worry if you're cooking at home and you're falling behind. This video will be available on Instagram as soon as I'm done cooking, and it'll also be available on YouTube Live as soon as I'm done cooking. So you'll have access to it. It's not the last time you're going to get to see any of this stuff. Okay, so we've got our coriander, our cinnamon, our cardamom. Next, peppercorn. So I just have a pepper grinder here. Maybe you have one too. If you don't, that's okay. You can just put in regular old black pepper. And it says to put in 4 teaspoons of pepper, so that's kind of a lot. I'm going to grind for a little while, but I'm going to do it by eye. Again, I'm not measuring it out. That's kind of obnoxious to do when you are using a grinder. There we go, that's plenty. Next, we have cloves. So there are 2 different kinds of cloves you can buy at the store. You can buy whole cloves or you can buy ground cloves. I'm using ground cloves here. Oh, they smell amazing. If you're somebody who celebrates Christmas, it's kind of a Christmassy scent. So I'm going to put in 1 teaspoon of cloves, and I'll go over all these quantities again in just a moment. 1 teaspoon of cloves. And now we're on to turmeric. So some people say this different. Some people say turmeric. Some people say turmeric. Some people say turmeric. I don't know. It's the yellow one. It doesn't have too much of a smell. No, it's just kind of earthy. It turns everything sort of yellow. So if you're used to your curries being yellow, this is the culprit. So we're going to put in 1 tablespoon of turmeric or turmeric. Again, I'm using a half a tablespoon measure, so that's why I'm putting in twice as much. Then I'm going to stir all that together as I read the quantities to you one more time. Okay, I did 3 tablespoons of coriander, making it very floury smelling. Then a half a teaspoon of cinnamon, although I know I put in more than that because I like the flavor of cinnamon. Then I put in 2 teaspoons of cardamom, 2 teaspoons of cardamom. Okay, then, although I think I may have put in tablespoons instead, oh well. Then we have 4 teaspoons of peppercorn, or just pepper, black pepper. Then 1 teaspoon of cloves, ground cloves. And then 1 tablespoon of turmeric, or turmeric. And what you end up with is something that looks like this. Okay, now when I was watching Hawa prepare this recipe on Bon Appetit, she said that this was the garam masala of Somalia. So if that's not a term that's familiar to you, garam masala is a very popular spice blend that you could buy at most grocery stores. That's Garam Masala, garam masala. And it actually has a lot of these spices in it. A lot of folks who prepare Indian food will use garam masala instead of using things like turmeric or using things like cumin, because garam masala has that in it. A lot of Americans use curry powder instead, which doesn't have a lot of the more sort of like fragrant spices that we are accustomed to tasting in Indian food when we eat it, when it's been prepared by Indian folks. So when she says that this, which is again hawaj, is the garam masala of Somalia, what that means is this spice blend is something that's used in many different dishes. So if you have more than you need right now, no worries. You can use this to prepare your yet another helping of this dish that we're preparing tonight. Or you can use it in dekakumbe, or you can use it in a lot of other Somali dishes. You'll find it as one of the key ingredients because it's how a lot of Somali folks will flavor their food. You might notice that I didn't put in anything that introduces heat or spiciness. So that's something I like in my food. I may be adding some additional heat or spiciness. And what I will be using to do this is not garam masala. That's what I nearly pulled out though. What I will be using to do this is cayenne pepper. Let's see, where is mine? There we go. Cayenne pepper is a different kind of spiciness than if you use hot sauce. Hot sauce, a lot of times I will taste on the front of my tongue, whereas cayenne pepper I taste towards the back of my tongue. So it's a warm heat as opposed to like an acidic heat. I don't know if that makes sense. I think I might add a little bit of cayenne right now. There we go, not too much. And then later on, I'll taste it and see if I feel like it's got enough. Great, okay. So it's on to chopping. You had to know there's going to be some chopping. If we're making a pasta sauce, there's going to be some chopping. I'm going to start out with my red onion here. I have a tiny red onion. I was so disappointed when I got my red onion. I was like, what? I love red onion. This is like half a red onion, but it'll do, as need must. Okay, so I'm going to start out by chopping off the top of my red onion, which makes a flat surface for chopping. And then I'm going to cut it in half, like this. Then, once I've cut my red onion in half and I've chopped off the top, I'm going to peel off the outside layer, which will allow me to get rid of all the flaky stuff, the skin of the onion. Oh my gosh, and when I do that, it gets even smaller. Ugh, my onion is just disappearing. Okay, there we go. Still, it looks like a nice one. Smells good. All right, and then I'm going to chop it actually kind of big. Usually we are accustomed, in this class at least, to almost mincing our onions, so that way it has more flavor than it does texture. But in this dish, I want the texture of the red onion. If you don't, you can do it however you want, but I'm going to chop it pretty big. So sometimes I even will, with red onion, I will leave it in discs like this. See, like that. And the reason why is because when I end up putting that in the pan, each one of these strands will straighten out and it'll sort of become a string of onion. That actually sounds good tonight. I think I'm going to do that. So I'm cutting my red onion into discs. You can make yours smaller if you want to, but it's quicker this way. I'm using the claw technique. In case you didn't notice, the claw technique is when you curl in your fingers like this so that way you don't chop them off. You're just guiding the blade with the knuckles. And I was also keeping the tip of the blade down and I was sawing it along like this. Then I dropped some of my prized red onion on the floor. So nice job, James. I'll set it aside because we have some other things to chop here. Actually, I think I'm going to put that in a bowl so that way I don't have to worry about the amount of space it's taking up on my chopping board. I'll probably eat out of this bowl later on. Naturally, I already washed my hands before we got started. I don't need to remind you all how important it is that we're washing our hands right now, particularly when we're preparing food for somebody else. The smaller the onion, the more fumes there are that come out of it when you've chopped it. So right now I've got onion fumes all in the air. Okay, next, green pepper. Okay, so my green pepper doesn't have a stem on it anymore, but if it did, I would chop that off. So I could lay it like this. I don't know if you can tell on both screens, I hope so, like this, okay? Then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to turn my knife like this, and I'm going to chop off the cheeks of the pepper, one of my favorite things to say. So I'm gonna start at the top, and I'm gonna gradually work the knife around. And what I'm trying to avoid here is all of those seeds in the center. I want to leave those where they are. I don't want to have to deal with those. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I turn the pepper a little bit. And I'm cutting around the core and the seeds. Just about done. Ooh, there we go. There's the last one. And I'm just left with this right here, which if I planted it, would grow me some more green peppers if I was living in the right climate. All right, so now I'm going to grab my organic bag where I throw away all of my plant trash. And toss that in there. And once again, I'm going to leave my green peppers pretty big. I'm not going to cut them super, super small like we're used to doing. I'm going to cut them just into some trout by using my claw technique here. And you'll notice that I am putting the blade on the, for lack of a better term, or I guess I could just say the inside of the pepper, just because there's more grip there. If I turn it like this, if my blade isn't super sharp, then it might slide and go unexpected places. So I want it like this instead. And I'm going to put the tip of the blade down and drag it. You could saw it like that if you want to, but I'm going to drag it. Watching my fingers the whole time. Here we go. Now I've got pieces that look like this. Those are too big, but not by much. I want some big chunks of green pepper there, just like this. I don't know if you can see how big those are. There you are. So I'm going to put those in the same bowl as my onions because unlike with some other dishes, I'm not cooking the onions before everything else. I'm going to cook the green peppers with the onions. Is that right? Well, no, it's not, but it'll work. It'll be fine. We're going to cook all of these down, so it doesn't really matter a whole lot. When I say we're going to cook all of them down, what I mean is that this is not one of those dishes that we're going to allow things to be sort of al dente, which is a word that means partially raw. That's not the literal translation, but that's what it is. Sometimes people like their pasta and their vegetables al dente, where they're still a little bit crunchy. This is not like that. Everything is going to get cooked down so it is really soft and moist. That's the texture of the dish. If you think about spaghetti sauce, you know, there's not usually a lot of crunchy things in there, right? When you think about a curry, it's the same way. And this is a cross between a curry and a spaghetti sauce. So we're not going to be having any crunchy vegetables today, as delicious as crunchy vegetables can be. I'm hoping that some of y'all had a chance to get out there in the weather today. It was absolutely beautiful. I live right by Loring Park, so I walked out there and I read my book for a little while, and it was just beautiful, just perfect. Okay, now that I have cut up my green onion or my green peppers, it's time for my garlic. We're going to use 4 cloves of garlic. This is a head of garlic. I'm going to cut off the tip of that head, and then I'm going to place my knife with the flat of the blade like this, and I'm going to hit it like this until the garlic splits, but it doesn't want to because I have a purple head of garlic. It is not truly ripe, so I'm going to have to peel it before it will break apart. Either that or I just wasn't hitting it hard enough. I don't know. Here we go. There's one. And these are pretty good size, actually. So I may just use 3. 2, 3. There we go. 3 pretty good sized cloves of garlic. If yours are smaller, you can use 4. Okay, now I'm going to cut off both ends of the garlic. If you watch any of my cooking classes at all, you know what happens next. We smash each of the cloves of garlic so it's easier for us to peel. And if I'm going faster than you, again, don't worry about that. You'll have plenty of time to catch up. In fact, in this particular dish, we're going to have a cook time of about a half an hour. So during that time, you'll be able to catch up while I make Somali tea. So, okay, what I've done there is after I smashed my, my clove of garlic, I cut it into little rounds like this. I'm going to push them off to the side. I'm going to mince them a little bit so nobody ends up with a mouthful of garlic. And the flavor is distributed evenly among the dish. Among the dish, sure, why not? Peeling the garlic. Okay. One of the things that I've heard in recent weeks is that it would be great if the camera angles were different for this cooking class. I couldn't agree more. It would be lovely if I could have y'all like right here looking over my shoulder as I was chopping this stuff up. Unfortunately, my kitchen is very small, so if I had the camera in here with me, it would have to be either me or the camera. And also, as I say, I'm using a laptop here, but I am going to experiment a little bit with moving the phone around a little bit, so those of you on Instagram Live might get a closer view of the pot while I'm cooking in that. Okay, so now that I've chopped up all of my garlic into rounds, I'm going to mince it by making a pile of the garlic, putting my knife tip down, my hand up here, making almost like a V with it here, and then sawing over the pile of garlic. Once I've done it once, I make a pile again, and I saw over the pile of garlic again. I've seen some people use their knife like this when they're doing that. If you want to, that's your prerogative. It's less safe, it's also less efficient, and it's easier to knock pieces of your garlic onto the floor. Also, this looks cooler. Okay, we're nearly where I want it. Great. Okay, that'll do for me. I don't mind some chunks of garlic. I'll show you how small they are. There you go. There that is. There's my garlic. All right, and that's going in with everything else. That's all the chopping we're going to do today, folks. That is it. It's not a heavy, heavy-duty chopping recipe like some of the ones we've been doing recently. Okay, so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pretty large pot. I'm using a Dutch oven. You don't have to. You can use any pot that you feel like is big enough for all the ingredients that you have just chopped, plus the turkey that we're going to be using. So I'll take off the lid here. We'll need that later. Boy, that's a heavy lid. And I'm going to turn the heat on medium-high. My apartment stove is not happy with me today. You know, my car is like this. When I fill it up with gas, it only starts after the third try. And people who are at the gas station with me always give me this look like your car's not going to start. So trust me, I've done this many times. I have faith in my stove. Here we go. Is this the time? Nope. Let's try the other side. There we go. All right, medium-high. Put it there. And while that's heating up, let's talk about oil. So in the recent weeks, we've been using a lot of neutral oil. So we've been using vegetable oil. When I say neutral, I mean flavorless. Vegetable oil has a very mild flavor. Whereas olive oil, which is what we're going to be using today, has a stronger flavor. It tastes like olives. And because this is a dish that's descended from Italy, even if it ended up in Somalia, we're going to use olive oil because it has a stronger flavor. So the recipe calls for half a cup of olive oil. I'm not going to measure that out. I'm just going to eyeball it. Maybe you can sort of tell how much oil I'm using from the amount of time that I tip the bottle. Really what I'm looking for is enough oil that it will coat the bottom of the pot. And I'm going to let that heat up a little bit. I never let it heat up enough. If I were cooking at home on my own, then maybe I would let it heat up enough. But whenever I'm doing this class, I get impatient. I want to get to the fun stuff. So I'm letting that heat. What I'm going to do in just a moment is add in all of my vegetables here. And then I'm going to let those cook with salt, but also with some of the, I want to make sure I say it right, the hawaj, with some of the hawaj as well. How much hawaj? Well, it depends upon how flavorful you want your food. So I'm going to let you see how much I put in here. I'm going to put in a grip because I really like my food pretty flavorful. I want to put in enough that it for sure changes the color of my onions and my vegetables. I want it to look yellowish brown. That's what I want the colors of my vegetables to be. Obviously, it's not going to change the color of my green peppers, but it will change the color of my garlic and of my onions. So got to keep an eye on that. Then I'm going to cook those vegetables. I can smell my oil is ready. Then I'm going to cook those vegetables until they have softened. I want them to be pretty soft. Even though I'm going to be cooking them for a while longer, I want the onions to be flimsy as opposed to stiff. And that'll be my sign that I've cooked them enough for the next step. So here we go. It's vegetable time. And I can tell that I let the oil cook for long enough because you get a sizzle when I add the vegetables. I wish I had so much more onion in this, y'all. Okay, and now I'm going to add in some of the hawaj. Kind of a lot. All right, I'm going to take my phone off here and so the people on Instagram can check it out. Hey, here we go. You can come with me. Sorry, YouTube, you're going to have to stay where you are. Okay, and I'm going to flip the angle here. Okay, this is what it looks like on the inside. So if you are watching on Instagram, you can see that I put in kind of a lot of that seasoning, right? And I'm mixing it all in here. I'm going to cook this until my onions are soft and stringy. It'll soften up the peppers too, but I don't expect the peppers to get as soft as I will eventually want them yet. I'm going to keep on moving it around. I want the heat to be evenly distributed. So I'm really stir frying this stuff, right? Because when you stay at the stove and you move, that's what stir frying is. When you stay at the stove and you keep everything moving. So there's no one thing that gets more heat than anything else. So while I'm doing this, I can answer some questions, maybe a quarter cup. I'm not sure what that was a question about because that was a little while ago. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm going to bring the heat down a little bit because I'm noticing that my spice mixture is sticking to the bottom of the pan and I don't want it there. I want it on my food. And I'm noticing that my onions, see that? They're becoming stringy. They're becoming softer. Not all the way cooked yet, but they're getting there. The amount of olive oil, yeah, they call for a half a cup. No, it was a quarter cup. But you don't have to worry too much about that exact measurement. In fact, I'm going to add a little bit of oil now. Because in a moment we're going to be adding another ingredient, and I want to make sure there's enough oil to cook the ingredient that I'm about to add. Also, I want that spice mixture, the hawaj, I want that off the bottom of the pan. Okay, that's good for now. All right, so next, I'm going to check my handwritten instructions here. So next we're going to add in the tomato paste. So I'm going to put this phone here. Let me see if I can flip it. There we go. Hello. I'm going to put the phone back over on the stand for a second so I have both of my hands. That'll do. There we go. All right, so next what I'm going to bring that heat down still more. And I'm going to grab my tomato paste. Okay, so I've used some of this tomato paste for something else in the recent past. It drives me nuts how you have to buy tomato paste in such big containers and how difficult it is to preserve it once you've opened it. We're looking for 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. So this is a half a tablespoon, so I'm adding 4 of these. You're probably noticing if you're cooking at home that your green peppers are releasing a lot of moisture, a lot of water. That's what you want. That's where some of the moisture this dish is coming from, is your green peppers. You don't have to use green peppers. You can use red peppers, you can use yellow peppers. I like green peppers. And actually, it's one of the things I like about this dish is the fact that typically it would probably be red bell peppers if I was making an Italian pasta sauce. You don't see a lot of green bell pepper. Well, that's not true. It depends on who's cooking it, I guess. I usually use red bell peppers. So I like that this time it's a green bell pepper instead. Once you've got that tomato sauce in there, or the tomato paste in there, it's time to add your meat if you're cooking with meat. So if you're not, then I would recommend using tempeh as a switch. Tempeh was recently recommended to me by my friend Chase, and I've been cooking with it since then. Highly recommend it when you're looking for a good meat substitute. I'm using turkey today, ground turkey, so that's going in next. All of it, let's get it in there. It's coming out of a colander for me because I had to defrost it. So now, my goal is to break up that ground turkey and to brown it. Whenever they say in recipes to brown meat, it can be deceiving because, as you see, we've already got this brown spice in there. So does that just mean when the hawaj is coating the turkey, then it's done? No. And in fact, brown is not always the color you're looking for when you're browning something. Isn't that annoying? So like if you're cooking chicken, like I was last night, to brown the chicken on both sides, it doesn't actually need to turn it brown in the way that a lot of us think of brown. When I think of brown, I often will think of like a chocolatey kind of color, like a cocoa color. But when you're browning chicken, or in fact turkey, what you're looking for is just almost like a tan shade. Nobody ever calls it tanning the meat. You might tan a hide, but not a meat. Okay. So I will acknowledge it's kind of tricky to tell when your turkey is cooked through because we have the hawaj in there. One of the nice things is that that turkey has picked up a lot of my seasoning from the bottom of the pan. That's what I was hoping for, and that's just the fat of the meat that is doing that. It's deglazing the bottom of the pan. But it doesn't really matter all that much if we can't tell that the turkey is completely done, because as I say, we're going to be cooking this down a lot. The next thing we're going to be adding is our tomatoes. So we're not going to be chopping fresh tomatoes for this recipe. There's no need. We're going to be using diced tomatoes. I always keep a bunch of these around. I'm going to be using a big can today, but you can use 2 smaller cans if you want to, or if you just have 1 smaller can on hand, that's fine. It's just a less tomatoey recipe then. All right, so I'm going to grab my can opener. I've seen such fancy can openers in recent years. I still have the kind that works the same as it did when I was a kid. I don't know what kind of can opener you have. Maybe you have an electric one. Maybe you have one of these ones that like turns the inside of the can inside out so it doesn't cut your fingers. I don't know. Those are cool. I've never even thought about getting one. I just got this one from IKEA for like $1. Okay, so I'm gonna add the tomato with the juices and everything, the whole thing, the whole can. Again, if you're using 2 cans, go for it. Get it in there and mix it up. Now, for me, I don't smell this food enough, and that worries me. So it's time for more seasoning. It's going to irritate some of you at home, but I'm not going to tell you how much I'm going to put in here because I'm not measuring it out. I'm just doing it by eye and by nose. I want to be able to smell the seasoning. So I'm going to add in some more of our hawaj. And I'm going to mix that in. We haven't salted anything yet, which is not okay. So I'm going to grab my salt. I'm using a kosher salt. You can use whatever kind of salt you want. I'm going to put in about a palm full of salt because this is a lot of pasta sauce and because we have not salted anything yet. Some of y'all might be thinking, well, you said that we were making a pasta, but we haven't even started on the spaghetti sauce yet, or on the spaghetti yet. That's because there'll be plenty of time for the spaghetti to be cooking while our sauce is cooking now. Okay, it's time for a taste test to see if my sauce needs anything. Wow. Wow, that's delicious. So what I like about this is the flavors that I typically associate with curries are mixing together with that tomato in a really lovely way. It doesn't need much more salt than what I've added, which is great. I'm excited about this. I'm wondering if I even want it to be spicier than it is or not, because I don't want to take away from the other flavors that are in the hawaj. I'm going to add some more, but I'm not going to add as much as I might ordinarily. I'm glad I tasted it. Okay. Just let that mix in there. Make sure you're tasting as you go. And then make sure once you've tasted, if you're going to be sharing this dish with somebody else, that you are hygienic in the way that you taste. So using the same spoon multiple times, they probably wouldn't appreciate so much. Let's see what that's like. Yep, that does it for me. That is great. Okay. Now, if I wanted to, I could probably serve that sauce as it is, but I don't want to. I want to make it taste even better, and the way that you do that is by letting it cook for a while. So I'm going to grab the lid for my Dutch oven, and you can grab the lid for whatever pot or pan you are using. I'm going to turn my heat up, and then the way I'm going to do this, you can do it the way that you want, but I'm going to put my pot lid over the top, but not the entire way, because I want to know when we get to a rolling boil, when it starts to bubble. And then once we get there, I'm going to bring it all the way down to a simmer, and I'm going to cover it. So I'm going to keep an eye on this. Actually, you know what? I think I may even keep the lid off of it until I see a rolling boil, which actually I'm getting close to already. I'm already seeing some bubbling here. Good sign. Okay, so while the sauce is cooking, which it will be doing for about a half an hour, it's time for us to start the actual spaghetti. So the way we'll do that, and if you cook spaghetti, we're going to do it just the same way as you ordinarily would, is we're going to fill up a pot. I forgot which way my faucet went for a second. Okay. Okay, now I've got a lot of bubbles here in my sauce. And so I'm going to bring the heat down to about a medium low. And I'm going to cover it. because I want all of those flavors to mix. Okay, so now I'm going to set a timer. For 30 minutes. Here we go. All right, time for us to get the spaghetti started. So I'm going to take the water that I just filled the pan with, and I'm going to salt it. You've heard me say this in recent weeks. You want to salt the water in the pot so that it tastes like salt water, or sorry, seawater, like ocean water, right? That's how we know that the pasta water has been adequately salted. It's more salt than you think you need. We tend to undersalt things in the United States, in my opinion, and as a result of that, our food is less flavorful. Salt just doesn't just make your food salty. Salt makes your food taste like itself. That's good. So, for example, the pasta that we're about to cook here, pasta has a particular flavor. It's supposed to. It's not supposed to just be bland. But if you salt the pasta in the cooking, then it will make the flavors of that pasta more evident. You'll be able to taste them when you eat. Same thing with our sauce that we're making here. If we hadn't added salt, then all of the flavors of the hawaj would not have been as easy to identify. It would have just tasted mild. It just would have tasted mild. And a lot of times when people talk about spiciness in their dishes and they say, "Oh, I'll have mine mild, please," what they mean is they want the heat, like the burning of your tongue. They want that to be very mild. And that's fine, they're entitled to that. But there's a difference between food that has a mild heat profile and food that is flavorless. So salting your food keeps it from being flavorless, regardless of how much spice, like heat spice, you want in there. Yeah, I think the pilot light on this side of my stove has gone out, so I'm going to use the other side. There we go. You want that on a high heat because you're boiling this water. And because you want it to boil faster, you're going to cover it with a lid. Then once that water is boiling, we're going to add our pasta. In the meantime, I want to show you all how to prepare something that goes pretty well with a lot of Somali food, which is Somali tea. You don't have to do this part with me at home if you don't want to. You're welcome to if you'd like to, but I didn't include any of these ingredients in the blog post for this week or anything like that. So if you're underprepared for it, don't worry, everybody is. I just want to talk about it. First time I had Somali tea was just a few years ago. I figured it was just the same as the tea that I grew up drinking. I am a big tea drinker from the United Kingdom originally, from England. And a lot of people in England drink tea, you know, just as often as Americans drink coffee. But they don't drink the kind of tea that a lot of Americans drink, which is like an herbal tea. They drink black teas. And they're usually unflavored, except for like milk and sugar. Somali tea, it's a whole other thing. It's a whole other thing. It's extremely flavorful and it's pretty sweet. So here's how you prepare it. I'm going to use this thing here. This was a gift that was given to me by a friend a couple of years ago. It is a tea strainer. If you don't have something like this, you don't need it. All you need is a pot, like the one that we're using to prepare our pasta water there. You're just going to add some water, 4.5 cups of water, ideally, to your pot, and you're going to boil that with all of the things that I'm about to put in this. And then you just need to strain those things out when you serve the tea. So if you have any kind of strainer, you can use that to get some of the more solid things out of your tea. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to make 1 cup of tea for myself here, and here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to start out by getting my kettle going here. I have an electric kettle over there. Maybe use a kettle that goes on your stove top, or maybe you use your microwave for boiling water. Whatever you use, it doesn't matter. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to take 1/4 a teaspoon of cardamom. So the cardamom that we used before is what I'm going to use again. It's that really nice, very strong smelling floral aroma. And how much do I need? I said 1/4 of a teaspoon of cardamom. So that's half of this. And I'm going to put that right in my strainer. Next, I'm going to take 3 cloves. They ask for whole cloves, not those. These cloves look like this. Like that. Looks like I've got nails there, or something that you would find on the ground in the autumn. So 1, 2, 3 of those whole cloves. Drop that in the strainer as well. They asked for half of a quill of cinnamon. I don't have a quill of cinnamon, but I do have the same cinnamon that we were cooking with before, so ground cinnamon. So I just learned today that 1 quill of cinnamon is 1/4 of a teaspoon of cinnamon. That's about that much cinnamon, but I like cinnamon, so I'm going to add a little bit more. And that goes for anything that you ever prepare. If you really like a particular ingredient and you want to taste more of it, then just add more of it. It's a good idea sometimes, the first couple of times you're preparing a recipe, to follow their recipe as much as you can so you can see what it's supposed to taste like. But after that, improvise. Next, we're going to add 1/4 of a teaspoon of ground ginger. I'm out of ground ginger. So I chopped up some ginger real small, I dried it out, and I tried to grind it with the bottom of a coffee cup today. It went okay. So 1/4 of a teaspoon of that, that's about that much. And maybe a little more because I love ginger. That's what makes the whole thing taste spicy. My tea's nearly done boiling over there. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a tea bag. Ooh, I think they're over here. If you have dry tea, like tea leaves, then you can use that too. I'm using my favorite, which is Twinings Earl Grey. Maybe if I say that enough, they will sponsor this little cooking class, and I will get an unlimited lifetime supply of Twinings Earl Grey tea. That would make me a very happy person. And I'm just going to take my tea bag and drop it right there in my strainer, with the string and everything. Do I want to do that? Yeah, I think I will do that. Yes, I will, and I'll show you why. These tea strainers are really cool. So I'm going to take my water, which just finished boiling, and I'm going to pour it in my tea strainer directly in there until it looks like I've got about a cup of tea in there. I think that'll do. And then I'm going to let that sit for a little while and just let all of those flavors combine. Then once I'm done with that, I'm going to use this tea strainer to pour a cup of tea, and then I'm going to add a couple of teaspoons of sugar, and then we'll have ourselves some Somali tea. So we've got our water still boiling over here. We're not there yet with the spaghetti water. We're getting there though. We've still got like 20 minutes to go on our sauce, but I want to see how it's doing. Check in on the sauce. And for those of you on Instagram, I'll give you a closer look here. See if I can flip my camera. Okay, here we go. This is what it looks like now, after about 8 minutes of cooking. It's looking good. I see a question, how much tomato paste? I believe it was 2, maybe 3 tablespoons. Let's see. It was 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. If you put in more or less, it's not a big deal. Okay, that's looking good. I wonder how it's tasting. Okay, where did I put my tasting spoon? There it is. Look how weird my sink is. It's just so weird. Okay. That's good. I'm getting a lot, as you might imagine, I'm getting a lot of some of those more floral flavors, like the cardamom and the coriander. And it's kind of overwhelming some other things in this dish right now, so I'm trying to think about some ways that I can mellow that out. One way I could mellow that out is by adding yogurt Anytime I overspice something or oversalt something, yogurt is a way of mellowing out flavors. I could also add some other sort of more acid flavors, because right now I'm getting a lot of that sort of like earthy flavor, right? But I'm going to wait on that for right now, because when we're finished, we're going to be adding some cilantro and some lime to the garnish of this meal. And those acidic, bright flavors might take care of it. That might be all it needs. We'll see. Another thing that we're going to be eating our pasta with is something that a lot of folks aren't aware is part of Somali cuisine, which is bananas. So we'll be having a banana with our food as well. A lot of Somali folks, certainly not all Somali folks, because, you know, everybody does things differently, but a lot of Somali folks will eat savory dishes, in other words, dishes that are not designed to be desserts, with a banana. So they'll have a bite of something that's spicy, and then they will mix that with a bite of banana, so they sort of go back and forth. Sometimes if you go to a Somali restaurant and they put a banana on the table, there are a lot of folks who are like, oh, I don't know what to do with this, and they save it for later and they eat it as a dessert, which you're welcome to do. It's just not what it's intended for. So we're going to be eating our banana with our meal. And we did something like that actually with the digag kumbe that we made in class. My pasta water is now boiling. So now I'm going to grab my spaghetti. And what I do to figure out how much spaghetti is right for a couple of people is I measure out, so if I'm looking at the spaghetti like this, I measure out sort of a quarter size. So think about how big a quarter is. It's about like that, right? So I'm going to try and get that much spaghetti. About like that. See, so that's about it. That's more like a nickel. Yeah, that's more like a nickel size. I'm going to shortchange my spaghetti. Yeah. So then once I've done that is I'm going to go over my boiling pasta water and I'm going to break it in half. The reason why I want to do that over my pasta water or over a sink is that there will be lots of little pieces that will break off, like that one that just fell there. Then I'm going to drop it into the water, being careful not to hurt my hands. I'm going to take my a wooden spoon and I'm just going to make sure that it all made it in there. If you're using a thin spaghetti, you'll notice that the boiling water immediately has an effect. Now, some people are very particular about how firm they want their spaghetti to be. If you are somebody who likes it to be al dente, then you maybe only want to cook it for, well, let's see what it actually says on the package here. Yeah, so from 9 to 11 minutes is what they're saying. And so if you want it al dente, then you would only cook it for 9 minutes. I prefer my pasta to be a little bit more cooked than that. So I'm going to cook it for about 11 minutes. I'm not going to cover that up again. I'm just going to let it go like this. I might turn it down just a little bit, so that way I'm not in any danger here of the pasta water bubbling up and going over the sides, but I don't think it would do that anyway. We still have about 16 minutes left on our sauce. I'm going to keep that covered, and then I'm going to let that pasta cook for another 11 minutes. So we'll be back after that time. In the meantime, I'm just going to step out and grab a glass of water. You are welcome to do the same. And after the pasta is cooked, then we will be ready for our final step. Actually, I wonder if my tea is ready. I'm going to check it out. I've got my Harvard mug. I did not go to Harvard, but I did journey to Harvard with a bunch of Project Success students a couple of years ago. So if anybody from the Boston trip is watching, shout out to you. Also, shout out to our home cooks today. I know that there are a bunch of you all who are preparing food at home with us. Let's see, what are some of the families that I know are definitely, or tune in week after week? Oh, we're okay. Let's see, I know the Brins family cooks with us most weeks, if not every week. I know that Mike Grace and his family have been cooking with us week after week. I hope you're with us this week. I also know that we've got a few folks who are using meal kits this week So a shout out to Angie, a shout out to Naya, and then also a shout out to Matthew, who will be cooking with us probably tomorrow night. So hi tomorrow, Matthew. If you are watching and you're a Project Success student and you'd like to take advantage of the meal kit option that we have, then all you got to do is get in touch with me. Let me know about that. You can email me at jamesr@projectsuccess.org. Or if that's too hard to remember, you can just email me at programs@projectsuccess.org. Once you do that, I'll add your name to sort of like a little lottery that we have, and then the following week, I'll send out groceries for what we're cooking that week to 3 students, and they will receive them on Monday. Then you'll be ready to cook with us on Wednesday. If you want to find this recipe and the video that you're watching right now later on, you can do that by going to the Project Success Institute Launchpad. So each week I've been sending out emails with links that you might need in order to participate to our students. You can expect the same thing in your email again next week. And once you do, you can just click on that link and you'll see not only this video, but some other videos about Somali cuisine and about pasta and things like that. You'll also find all the ingredients and a link to the recipe. So it'll all be there for you to see. And it looks like my live video for Instagram has ended for some reason, so I'm going to share that story. And we're going to go live again. Okay, welcome back again. If you are just rejoining us on Instagram, our video ended for a short while. Still got 13 minutes left on this sauce here, but I'm going to taste it and see how it's tasted. Oh, my tea. Oh my gosh, I want to try out the tea. Okay, here we go. This thing is so cool. I just put it down on top of the mug, and then it drains all the liquid into the mug, leaving all the solid stuff on top. And I think the tea bag that I put in there is sort of blocking it a little bit. Just gonna fish that out. Okay, there we go. And then I'm going to add a little bit of sugar to that. This is only about half a cup of tea, so I'm not going to add 2 teaspoons of sugar. I'll just add 1. I made this earlier today. I was really happy with it. I was excited to try the dried and ground ginger. So let's see how this turned out. Yeah, that's good. I still want it to be more gingery though. Like that's the change I would make. I'll include a recipe for the Somali tea as well on the blog post for this week. Okay, let's taste our sauce. I'm worried that's gonna fall. See, doing a cooking class in a very small kitchen is not ideal. All right, here we go. I just about scorched my taste buds there. That was way too hot. I'm gonna put my water. There it is. Yeah, that's turning out well. And I think that the next time I do it, I will have just a smidge less of the hawaj. I got over-enthusiastic. It's still good, but I think it needs a little less of that. To my mind, that is just about cooked. And so I think that when the pasta is done, will be ready to serve up. There are a couple things we can do in the meantime. One of the things we can do is we can get our cilantro ready. So I'm going to take my cilantro, and in the same way as we have done in the past, we're not going to use every part of the cilantro. We're going to take the sharp part of the knife and we're going to run it along the leaves, which separates the leaves from the stems. It's okay if we get some stems in there, we just don't want all the stems in there. Okay, so I'm left with that. And on my cutting board, I have this. I like to have my cilantro minced a little bit more than that. So I'm using the exact same technique that I used on the garlic. That's good. I don't need it too much smaller than that. And then for the lime, I saw a new technique for the lime the other day, which is you take the lime and before you juice it, you roll it using the flat of your knife blade. I can't tell you why, but I've never seen it before and I thought, I'm going to try this. Then you can cut your lime in half, and it'll be ready to go when it's time to serve up. In the meantime, I'm going to enjoy some of my tea. Whew, although maybe I feel like I should be drinking something cold. I nearly scalded my mouth on that pasta sauce. That's better. That's better. I have to say, after having Somali tea the first time, I wondered why I'd ever had it the other way. It's just so powerful, and it tastes festive. You know, it's delicious. I'm going to check in on the texture of the pasta. This time I'm going to use tongs. If you don't have tongs, but you do have a slotted spoon, you can try that. It's looking pretty good. I'm going to grab one strand of that. And I'm going to test it for texture. I'm happy with that. I don't need it more cooked than that. That is fine by me. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to grab my colander and I make sure it doesn't have any of the turkey in it from before. I don't have anything against turkey. I just don't really want to eat any raw turkey. In fact, I'm going to give it a once over with my dish wand. Go. And I'm going to take my pasta and I'm going to pour it into the colander. You have to be careful with this part. Make sure that you're not scalding your face with the steam. Sometimes we know that we're clear of the water. We haven't made sure that we're clear of the steam. That left some strands of spaghetti at the bottom of my pot. I want to eat those. And I'm checking the timer on the sauce. There's about 5 minutes left on the timer. When I tasted it last, it tasted great to me. I don't feel like it needs more time than it's had. So, let's lose the lid. Turn off the heat. I'm going to use a ladle for this. more liquid in the sauce than there was originally, and that liquid has come from the tomatoes and from the peppers. Then I'm going to take the bowl that I'm eating from, and I'm going to grab some spaghetti. You can add more if you want to. I think I actually will. Okay. I'll take my ladle, and I'll grab some sauce. I want to make sure I've got some of everything in there. Then I'm going to take some cilantro, put that over the top. Take my lime. I'm going to squeeze that all over the meal. Ooh, something has made my nose run. Excuse me. See, you came for the cooking class, but you get to stay and watch somebody blow their nose. That's just always such a privilege. I'll wash my hands one more time. And we'll give this a try. So let me grab my banana. And I'm somebody who really hates the squished top of a banana, so I always use a knife to cut a little notch at the top, and then it's easier to peel. Okay? And a lot of folks will make sure that they have a spoon and a fork on hand when they're eating spaghetti, because they want to twirl it up in the spoon, right? So I'm going to try and do that. Got my spoon, got my fork. I'm going to mix together the spaghetti, and I want to get all of that lime juice in there too. Hawa, who was the chef who developed this dish for the test kitchen, talked about how sometimes she will eat this over a sweet potato, and I can see how that would be really good. I want to get some green pepper in there as well. That's great. That's great. Yep, I like that. Would recommend. I hope that you had a good time cooking with us tonight. If you didn't get to cook with us tonight, I hope you get a chance to cook with us later on. If you did cook with us tonight, take a picture. We would love to see what you have made. You can text it to me if you happen to have that number. If not, then you can email it to me at jamesr@projectsuccess.org or at programs@projectsuccess.org. We just love to see whatever it is you come up with, whether it was successful or unsuccessful. Both are valuable. I hope you're having a good time. I hope that you're able to stay busy and engaged in whatever is taking up your life right now. I hope you're staying safe. Project Success misses you, and we can't wait until we can work with you in person again. In the meantime, we're going to be back here again every Wednesday until the end of the school year. So take care. Goodbye. Be safe. Cook delicious food. Send me some.